What if the first words we ever spoke to aliens sparked a war? Humanity finally picks up a signal from deep space, but our answer? It's a disaster waiting to happen. Stay with me, because this first contact might just be our last. But before we dive into this cosmic chaos, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss more epic stories where humanity either conquers or completely screws up the universe. Alright, let's get into it. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been staring at the same radio telescope data for 16 hours straight. Her eyes bloodshot and burning, and she was starting to think the universe was playing an elaborate practical joke on her. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, leaving a bitter ring in her favorite mug, the one with I want to believe printed in fading letters that her daughter had given her for Christmas 3 years ago. This can't be right, she muttered for the dozenth time, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses and rubbing her temples. The signal from Kepler 442b was impossibly complex, layers upon layers of mathematical sequences, prime numbers arranged in patterns that defied conventional understanding and what appeared to be music, or something analogous to it. The frequencies created harmonics that seemed almost deliberate, as if someone was composing a symphony using radio waves. The lab door burst open with enough force to rattle the equipment racks. "Elena, you need to see this right now." Dr. James Park stumbled in, practically vibrating with excitement, his usually pristine lab coat wrinkled and his black hair sticking up at odd angles. He'd clearly been running. "We've been running the signal through every decryption algorithm we have, quantum processing, neural networks, even some experimental AI systems the NSA lent us. It's not just a message, it's a conversation. They're talking to each other, and Elena..." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They know we're listening." Elena's stomach dropped. "What do you mean they know we're listening?" "The signal patterns changed the moment we started actively monitoring instead of just passively receiving. Look at this." James pulled up a holographic display showing 2 overlapping waveforms. "This is the signal from yesterday, and this is from today. See the difference? They're responding to our observation patterns. When we focused on the mathematical sequences, they started emphasizing them. When we analyzed the harmonic components, they began broadcasting in perfect musical intervals." "That's impossible." Elena breathed, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't. The evidence was right there in front of her, beautiful and terrifying in its implications. "Elena, I don't think you understand what this means," James said, his voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. "This isn't just first contact. This is first contact with a species that has been watching us analyze their signals in real time. They've been studying our methods, our thought processes, our approach to problem solving. They know how we think." Within 48 hours, the discovery had triggered the largest international cooperation effort in human history. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency session that lasted 18 hours. The Pope issued a statement. The stock markets crashed and soared, then crashed again. Social media exploded with theories ranging from the plausible to the completely insane. The United Nations established the First Contact Protocol Committee in a hastily converted conference center in Geneva, assembling humanity's finest linguists, anthropologists, mathematicians, and diplomats. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself on a military transport plane, clutching her laptop in a hastily packed bag, wondering how her quiet life of searching for radio signals had suddenly become the most important job on Earth. Remember, Ambassador Catherine Sterling addressed the assembled team during their first briefing, her voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of international diplomacy. "We get one chance at this. Everything depends on not screwing up first contact. The entire future of human civilization may hang in the balance." She was a tall woman with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a navy blue suit that looked like it had been pressed 5 minutes ago, despite the fact that she'd been in meetings for the past 48 hours straight. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, the kind of eyes that had stared down dictators and negotiated peace treaties. "The signal analysis team has determined that our extraterrestrial neighbors possess technology far beyond our current capabilities," Sterling continued. "They're broadcasting from a distance of 1,200 light-years with perfect clarity. They have some form of faster-than-light communication, possibly quantum entanglement on a macro scale. In short, if they decide we're a threat, We're in serious trouble. Dr. Sarah Chen, the team's linguist, raised her hand. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair, known for her work in translating ancient dead languages. Ambassador, have we considered that they might be just as nervous as we are? First contact is a two-way street. They're taking just as big a risk by revealing themselves. That's exactly what we're hoping, Sterling replied. But we can't assume anything. We need to be prepared for every possible scenario. If only they had known that screwing up would be exactly what saved them. The UFO ship materialized in Earth's orbit 6 months later on a Tuesday morning, appearing without warning during the shift change at the International Space Station. The crystalline structure seemed to bend light around itself, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. It was beautiful and alien and utterly unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. Commander Sarah Rodriguez was the first human to lay eyes on it. Houston, this is Rodriguez on the ISS. We have a situation up here. You need to see this. The footage went viral within minutes. A mile-long crystal that seemed to be grown rather than built, pulsing with internal light that shifted through colors that had no names. It didn't conform to any known principles of engineering or physics. It simply existed, hanging in the void like a jewel against a star field. The Eto had been monitoring human communications. They explained through their initial transmission and were ready for proper discourse. The message came through every radio telescope on Earth simultaneously, despite the fact that their ship was only visible from one hemisphere. Greetings, humans of Earth. The message began, translated into every major language with perfect grammar and syntax. We are the Ethel. We have observed your species develop the capacity for interstellar communication. We wish to engage in formal diplomatic contact. The translation system they provided was a marvel of technology that arrived in the form of a small crystalline device that materialized in the center of the UN General Assembly during an emergency session. No one saw it appear. It was simply there, sitting on the podium like it had always belonged. Dr. Sarah Chen spent 3 days studying the device before she finally worked up the courage to touch it. The moment her fingers made contact, her mind was flooded with understanding. Not words, not concepts, but pure meaning flowing directly into her consciousness. It's perfect, she reported to the committee, her voice filled with wonder. It doesn't translate words. It translates thoughts, intent, meaning. There's no room for misinterpretation. We can communicate with absolute clarity. The device worked by creating a direct connection between minds, allowing for the transmission of ideas without the barrier of language. It was like telepathy, but artificial and controlled. Nieto had developed it over centuries of contact with other species, they explained, perfecting it until misunderstandings were impossible. The first formal diplomatic session was held in a neutral space station hastily constructed in lunar orbit. The project took every major space agency working in concert, pooling resources and expertise in a way that would have been impossible without the unifying thread of first contact. The station was a marvel of international cooperation. American modules connected to Russian ones, Chinese technology interfacing with European systems, Indian computers running Japanese software. Ambassador Sterling led the human delegation, armed with carefully prepared statements and protocols developed by the world's best diplomatic minds. She'd spent weeks memorizing every detail, every possible contingency, every cultural consideration that humanity's greatest anthropologists could imagine. The human team consisted of 12 individuals: Ambassador Sterling, Dr. Chen, Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Park, Military Advisor General Patricia Hayes, economist Dr. Robert Kumar, philosopher Dr. Maria Santos, psychologist Dr. David Kim, historian Dr. Michael O'Brien, biologist Dr. Lisa Anderson, and physicist Dr. Ahmed Hassan. Each had been chosen to represent different aspects of human knowledge and perspective. High Coordinator Vextar of the Ethel floated across from them in the station's central meeting chamber, their crystalline form pulsing with what the translation system interpreted as formal courtesy. They were roughly humanoid but translucent, with internal structures that shifted and flowed like liquid light. Their voice, when it came through the translation system, was neither male nor female, but something entirely other. We greet the humans of Earth. Vexteros' thoughts came through perfectly clear, carrying undertones of ancient dignity and vast intelligence. We have observed your species for the equivalent of your 57 years. We find you adequate for preliminary contact. The word adequate hung in the air like a challenge. Sterling felt a flicker of annoyance but pushed it down. Cultural differences, she reminded herself. They probably meant it as a compliment. Sterling smiled diplomatically, drawing on 30 years of experience in international relations. We're honored by your presence and look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our civilizations. We believe there is much we can learn from each other. Peaceful relations, Vextar repeated, their form shifting to what the system translated as confusion. The internal light patterns changed, becoming more angular and sharp. This concept is imprecise. Define your terms. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. We mean that we wish to coexist without conflict, to share knowledge and understanding to benefit both our species through cooperation. Cooperation, Vextar's form darkened slightly. This implies that neither species is capable of achieving optimal outcomes independently. Are you acknowledging inferiority? Sterling felt the first stirrings of unease. Not inferiority, no. We believe that different perspectives can lead to better solutions. What one species might overlook, another might discover. Overlooking information suggests imperfection in observation or processing. Vextar replied, Are you stating that your species is imperfect? Well, yes, all species are imperfect. That's why cooperation is valuable. The silence that followed was deafening. What happened next would be studied by xenosociologists for generations, becoming a textbook example of how cultural assumptions can derail even the most carefully planned diplomatic initiatives. The problem wasn't with the translation system, it was with the fundamental assumptions built into it. The Ethel were a hive mind species that had achieved what they considered perfect societal harmony millennia ago. They had no concept of individual disagreement, personal opinions, or, most critically, the ability to change their minds based on new information. We propose a trade agreement, Sterling continued, following her script with growing uncertainty. We can exchange scientific knowledge, cultural information, and resources that would benefit both our species. We have unique insights into biological adaptation, individual creativity, and problem-solving approaches that might interest you. Vextar's form darkened noticeably. Exchange implies imperfection. You possess something we lack, and we possess something you lack. This suggests incompleteness in both species. Are you claiming that the Ethel are incomplete? Well, yes, Sterling said, beginning to sense the conversation veering dangerously off course. No species knows everything. We can learn from each other. That's the beauty of diversity. Different experiences lead to different insights. Learning, Vextar's form now pulsed with what the system registered as deep offense. The light patterns turning sharp and red implies previous ignorance. You accuse us of ignorance. Dr. Chen frantically consulted her notes, her fingers flying across her tablet. Ambassador, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, Vextar interrupted, their form now blazing with translated fury, is impossible with perfect translation. The device conveys meaning without distortion. You speak falsehoods deliberately. This is what you call lying. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. General Hayes's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm, even though weapons had been banned from the station. Dr. Kumar's face had gone pale, and Dr. Santos was scribbling notes frantically. We're not lying, Sterling said carefully. We're trying to explain how we see the world. Humans often have different opinions about the same facts. We see this as normal, even beneficial. Different opinions about facts, Vextar repeated, their form now shifting through colors that had no translation. Facts are objective reality. There can be only one correct interpretation. Multiple interpretations indicate either ignorance or deception. Dr. Kim, the psychologist, leaned forward. In our species, individual minds can process the same information differently based on personal experience, cultural background, and cognitive patterns. We don't see this as a flaw. We see it as a strength. Individual minds, Vextero's form contracted slightly. You operate with separate consciousness? This explains the chaos. How do you achieve consensus? We debate, Sterling replied. We discuss. We vote. We compromise. Compromise, Vextero's form now pulsed with what could only be described as horror. You accept suboptimal solutions deliberately? The situation deteriorated rapidly from there. Every human attempt at diplomacy was interpreted as an insult or evidence of mental instability. When Sterling tried to explain that humans often change their opinions based on new information, the Ethel saw this as proof that humans were fundamentally unreliable. When she mentioned that humans sometimes disagreed with each other, the Ethel concluded that humanity was a species in constant civil war. Your species exhibits multiple contradictory belief systems, Vextero declared, their form now blazing with agitation. You have individuals who believe in different deities, different political systems, different moral frameworks. This is not diversity, this is madness. It's not madness, Dr. Santos protested. It's the natural result of free thought and individual consciousness. We value the right to think differently. The right to be wrong, Vextero corrected. You celebrate error as virtue. We celebrate the right to make our own choices, Sterling replied, feeling her diplomatic training slipping away, even if those choices are sometimes wrong. This session is terminated, Vextero declared, their form now pulsing with what the system could only translate existential distress. The human species is chaotic, deceitful, and dangerous. We will return to our worlds and recommend immediate containment protocols. The crystalline form began to fade, becoming translucent. Wait, Sterling called out desperately. Please, let us explain. But Vextero was already gone, leaving only the lingering scent of ozone and the crushing weight of failed first contact. The next 72 hours were a nightmare of emergency sessions, frantic communications, and increasingly hostile exchanges. The Ethel had withdrawn to their ship and were broadcasting messages to what appeared to be a larger fleet in nearby space. Radio telescopes detected at least 12 more ships materializing at the edge of the solar system. They're calling us an unstable element, Dr. Chen reported grimly during the emergency session. Her face was drawn with exhaustion, and her hand shook slightly as she consulted her notes. They think we're going to spread chaos throughout the galaxy. They're using terms like cognitive contamination and mental disorder epidemic. The world watched with growing terror as news of the failed contact spread. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders held emergency prayers. Scientists appeared on every news channel, trying to explain what had gone wrong. Social media exploded with theories and blame. Can we explain that we're not dangerous? Sterling asked desperately. She'd been in continuous meetings for 60 hours, surviving on coffee and determination. That our differences are a strength, not a weakness? That's the problem, Chen replied, her voice hollow. In their worldview, our very existence is proof of our instability. The fact that we have different governments, different religions, different opinions to them, that's like a planet where gravity works differently in each city. It's not just alien to them, it's impossible. Dr. Park had been monitoring the Ethel communications with increasingly sophisticated equipment. They're calling us a chaos species, he reported. They have a whole classification system for species they've encountered. There are order species like themselves, neutral species that maintain basic stability, and chaos species that are considered dangerous to galactic civilization. How many chaos species have they encountered? General Hayes asked. According to their communications, we're the first they've ever found that achieve interstellar communication capability. Park replied. All the others were contained. The word contain hung in the air like a death sentence. President Martinez addressed the world from the Oval Office, her voice steady despite the circumstances. My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, we face a crisis unlike any in human history. Our first contact with alien intelligence has not gone as we hoped. But we must not despair. We must not give up. We are humanity, and we have faced extinction before. We will face it again, and we will survive. But privately, world leaders were less optimistic. In classified briefings, military advisors painted grim pictures of humanity's chances against a species that could travel faster than light and had the backing of what appeared to be a galactic civilization. The breaking point came when Ambassador Sterling, exhausted and frustrated, finally abandoned her diplomatic training during what was supposed to be a final attempt at communication. "You know what?" she said during the transmission to the Ethel ship, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's frustration. "You're right. We are chaotic. We do change our minds. We argue, we fight. We disagree about everything. Half our planet thinks pineapple belongs on pizza, and the other half thinks that's an abomination. We can't even agree on what color dress is when we're looking at the same photograph. The Ethel delegation's forms pulse with what the system could only translate as horrified fascination. Sterling was just getting started. 3 days of diplomatic failure had stripped away her professional veneer, leaving raw human emotion. We've been trying to present ourselves as this perfect, unified species because we thought that's what you wanted. But you know what? We're not. We're messy and complicated, and we make mistakes. We change our minds, we learn from our errors, and we somehow make it work anyway. We've been at war with ourselves for most of our history, she continued, her voice rising with passion. We've committed genocide, enslaved our own species, destroyed our environment, and invented weapons that could wipe out all life on Earth. We've made every mistake a species could possibly make. Vextura's form flickered with untranslatable colors. "But we're still here," Sterling said, her voice now carrying a note of defiance. "We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and our own stupidity. We adapt. We evolve, we grow. We take our failures and we learn from them. We take our differences and we make them into strengths. We have 7 billion people on this planet, and every single one of them is unique. They have different dreams, different fears, different hopes. They worship different gods, follow different philosophies, create different art. And somehow, despite all of that chaos, despite all of that difference, we've built cities that touch the sky. We've sent machines to other planets. We've eradicated diseases and created music that can make people cry." "You celebrate your chaos," Vextora said, their form now flickering with something the system couldn't translate. "Damn right we do," Sterling replied, her voice fierce with pride. "Because that chaos is what makes us strong. That chaos is what makes us human. That chaos is what makes us beautiful." The transmission cut off, leaving Sterling alone with her words echoing in the empty chamber. The Ethel ship remained in orbit for 3 more days, silent and mysterious. During this time, they conducted what they called deep observation of human society. They watched news broadcasts, intercepted social media feeds, monitored global communications, and observed human behavior on a scale that was both massive and intimate. They watched as humans responded to the crisis. They saw people coming together across national boundaries to offer support. They observed scientists sharing data freely, artists creating works inspired by the encounter, children asking questions that revealed the curious nature of human consciousness. They watched humans argue about the best response to the crisis, then work together despite their disagreements. They saw religious leaders of different faiths holding joint prayers. They observed politicians putting aside partisan differences to focus on the species' survival. Most importantly, they watched humans adapt. In just 3 days, they saw a species that had been preparing for peaceful contact pivot to preparing for possible conflict, then pivot again to attempting new forms of communication. They saw humans creating new art, new technology, new ideas, all in response to the changed circumstances. When they finally requested another meeting, their entire demeanor had changed. "We have made an error," Vexter announced, their form now pulsing with what the system translated as profound respect. The crystalline being seemed somehow more solid, more present than before. "We believed chaos was weakness. We have discovered it is strength." Sterling, who had been expecting a declaration of war, blinked in confusion. Come again? In our observations, we witnessed your species respond to 347 different crisis situations during our monitoring period. Vexter explained, their form now cycling through colors that suggested wonder. Natural disasters, political conflicts, social upheavals, technological failures, personal tragedies. In each case, your species demonstrated an ability we had not previously encountered. Which is? Adaptation. Your chaos is not random, it is responsive. When circumstances change, your species changes. When challenges arise, you find new solutions. When your environment shifts, you shift with it. This is not instability, this is evolution in real time. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her exhaustion. We've always seen it as normal. How did the Ethel respond to crises? We have not faced a crisis in 12,000 years, Vextar replied. We achieved optimal social organization and optimal technological development. We have maintained this state without deviation since that time. And that's good? Dr. Kim asked. We believed it was optimal, Vextar said, their form dimming slightly. We had not realized it was terminal. Vextar's form brightened again. We have achieved perfection. We have not changed in 12,000 years. We have not needed to change. But we have also not grown. We have not adapted. We have not evolved. We have achieved stasis. And that's a problem? Dr. Chen asked. It is a terminal condition, Vextar replied. We had not realized this until we observed your species. You're not chaotic. You are evolutionary. You continue to become what you need to become. Sterling felt a strange sense of vertigo, as if the entire conversation had suddenly shifted to a parallel universe. Are you saying that our flaws are actually strengths? We are saying that what we perceive as flaws are the very mechanisms that allow for growth and adaptation, Vextra explained. Your ability to change your minds allows you to incorporate new information. Your individual differences allow you to approach problems from multiple angles. Your disagreements force you to examine your assumptions and improve your solutions. But we make mistakes, Dr. Santos protested. We have wars, injustice, suffering, and you work to correct these problems, Vextora interrupted. Constantly. Imperfectly. But you try. You fail, you learn, you try again. This is not chaos. This is evolution. The human delegation exchanged glances, each processing this information in their own way. Dr. Vasquez was frantically taking notes. General Hayes looked like she was trying to determine if this was some kind of elaborate trap. Dr. Kumar was calculating the economic implications. We observed your species' response to our withdrawal, Vextar continued. Within hours, you had formed new alliances, developed new strategies, created new technologies. You adapted to the threat we represented without losing your essential humanity. We also panicked, Sterling pointed out. There were riots, economic crashes, political upheaval, and yet you overcame these challenges, Vextar replied. You use your chaos to create order. You use your differences to find common ground. You use your imperfection to strive for improvement. The diplomatic disaster had become something else entirely, a mutual learning experience that neither species had expected or prepared for. We wish to propose a new form of relationship, Vextora announced, their form now pulsing with what seemed like excitement. Not trade, not alliance, but guidance. Sterling raised an eyebrow. You want us to guide you? We want to learn your chaos, Vextora explained. Your ability to change, to adapt, to grow. We have watched your species for 6 days and witnessed more innovation than we have achieved in millennia. You create solutions we would never consider because we cannot conceive of problems we have not already solved. But we don't have a perfect society, Sterling protested. We have poverty, war, injustice, environmental destruction, and you work to fix these things, Vextora interrupted. Constantly. Imperfectly. But you try. When you fail, you don't give up, you try differently. When you succeed, you don't stop, you try to succeed better. Dr. Chen spoke up. What about your own civilization? Surely you face challenges. We have faced no challenges because we eliminated the possibility of challenge, Vextar replied. We created a perfect system and then maintained it. We have not grown because we have not needed to grow. We have not learned because we believe we had nothing left to learn. That sounds peaceful, Dr. Kim observed. It is death, Vextera replied simply. We have achieved the ultimate efficiency, the ultimate order, the ultimate predictability. We have eliminated waste, eliminated conflict, eliminated error. We have also eliminated possibility. The human delegation was quiet for a moment, processing this revelation. So, Sterling said carefully, you want us to teach you how to be imperfect? We want you to teach us how to be alive, Vextar replied. We have discovered that perfection is another word for death. You have shown us that chaos is another word for life. Over the following days, the Ethel shared more about their civilization. They were part of a galactic community of species that had achieved various forms of social and technological stability. Most had reached a state similar to the Ethel, perfect but static. They had long lifespans, advanced technology, and peaceful societies, but they had also stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped evolving. We are the oldest species in the local galactic community, Vextar explained during one of their extended conversations. We have existed in our current form for 12,000 years. The newest member species achieved stability 3,000 years ago. Until now, we believed this was the natural progression of intelligence, from chaos to order, from imperfection to perfection. But you're not happy, Dr. Santos observed. Even with your perfect society, you're not satisfied. We had not realized we were unsatisfied until we observed your species, Vextar admitted. We had no reference point for comparison. We believed contentment was optimal. We had not considered that growth might be preferable to contentment. The revelation transformed the entire dynamic of the contact. Instead of a technologically superior species judging humanity's worthiness, it became a mutual exchange between a species that had achieved stability and a species that had achieved vitality. We have something to offer each other, Sterling realized. You have the wisdom of stability, the benefits of advanced technology, the perspective of long experience. We have the energy of growth, the creativity of diversity, the resilience of adaptation. Yes, Vextar agreed. We propose a partnership, not one of equals. Our technologies and experiences are vastly different, but one of mutual benefit. We will share our knowledge and our perspectives. In return, you will share your chaos. How exactly do you share chaos? Dr. Park asked. We will learn to disagree, Vextar replied. We will learn to change our minds. We will learn to accept uncertainty. We will learn to fail and try again. We will learn to be imperfect. That's actually terrifying, Dr. Chen said. What if your society can't handle that level of change? Then we will adapt, Vexter said, their form brightening. As you have taught us, adaptation is survival. Stasis is death. The first human Ethel cultural exchange program began 6 months later, starting with a small group of volunteers from both species. The program was unlike anything either species had attempted before, not just sharing information, but sharing ways of thinking. The Ethel participants were volunteers who had been selected for their ability to cope with uncertainty and change. For their species, this was like selecting individuals for their ability to survive in a toxic environment. The human participants were selected for their ability to work with radically different perspectives and their patience with slow, careful change. Dr. Chen found herself working with a group of Ethel linguists, trying to teach them the concept of brainstorming. The idea that multiple individuals could propose different solutions to the same problem, and that even wrong ideas could lead to better solutions. The purpose is not to find the correct answer immediately, she explained to her Ethel students. The purpose is to generate many possible answers, even incorrect ones, and then use those to inspire better answers. The concept was almost incomprehensible to the Ethel. In their society, proposing an incorrect solution was not just wasteful, it was actively harmful to the group's efficiency. The idea that incorrect solutions could be valuable was revolutionary. But if you know the solution is incorrect, why propose it? Asked one of the Ethel students, their form flickering with confusion. Because someone else might see something in it that I missed, Dr. Chen replied. Or because it might make them think of a completely different approach. Or because sometimes the wrong answer is actually right for a different problem. The breakthrough came when one of the Ethel students accidentally proposed a solution that was clearly incorrect according to their established knowledge. Instead of immediately correcting the error, Dr. Chen asked the other students to build on the idea. What if we assumed this incorrect solution was actually correct? She asked. What would that tell us about the problem? The exercise led to a completely new approach to the problem they were working on, one that none of them would have considered if they had dismissed the incorrect solution immediately. This is uncomfortable, the student admitted, but also invigorating. Meanwhile, Ambassador Sterling was working with Ethel diplomats on the concept of compromise, the idea that two groups could have different goals and still work together by finding solutions that partially satisfy both. In human diplomacy, we rarely get everything we want, she explained. The goal is to find solutions that everyone can live with, even if they're not perfect for anyone. The Ethel found this concept disturbing. In their society, optimal solutions were always possible through sufficient analysis and discussion. The idea of deliberately accepting suboptimal outcomes was like voluntarily choosing to poison yourself. But if you can determine the optimal solution, why would you choose a suboptimal one? Asked High Coordinator Vextara, who had volunteered to participate in the cultural exchange. Because different people have different ideas about what's optimal, Sterling replied. What's best for me might not be best for you. Compromise allows us to find solutions that work for both of us, even if they're not perfect for either of us. The Ethel diplomats struggled with this concept until Sterling proposed a practical exercise. She presented them with a scenario where two groups had conflicting but equally valid goals and asked them to find a solution. The Ethel spent hours analyzing the problem, trying to determine which goal was objectively superior. They couldn't accept that both goals could be valid simultaneously. What if we stopped trying to determine which goal is better, Sterling suggested, and instead focused on finding a solution that advances both goals partially? The resulting discussion was unlike anything the Ethel had experienced. Instead of seeking the single correct answer, they found themselves exploring multiple possible answers, each with different trade-offs and benefits. This is chaotic, one of the Ethel diplomats observed. Yes, Sterling agreed. But it's also creative. You're finding solutions that none of us would have thought of individually. Over the following months, the cultural exchange program began to show results that surprised everyone involved. The Ethel participants were indeed learning to embrace uncertainty and change, but the process was transforming them in ways that went beyond what anyone had expected. We are becoming something new, Vextara reported during one of their regular progress meetings. Not human, but not fully Ethel either. We are evolving. The changes were subtle but profound. Ethel participants began to express individual preferences, something that had been unknown in their society for millennia. They started to disagree with each other on minor issues, then gradually on more significant ones. They began to experiment with different approaches to problems even when they already had working solutions. Yesterday, one of our participants suggested that we might be wrong about our approach to energy generation. Vextar reported, their form pulsing with what the translation system had learned to recognize as excitement. Not that our current system is inefficient, but that there might be better alternatives we haven't considered. Dr. Chen was fascinated by the transformation. How does it feel? The uncertainty, the individual thoughts? Terrifying, Vextar admitted. But also alive. For the first time in millennia, we don't know what will happen next. For the first time, we have possibilities instead of certainties. The changes weren't limited to the Ethel participants. The human participants were also being transformed by their exposure to Ethel perspectives. They were learning to think more systematically, to consider longer-term consequences, to value stability alongside change. Dr. Park, who had been working with Ethel scientists on technology integration, found himself approaching problems with a patience and thoroughness that was foreign to his usual style. They've taught me to think in centuries instead of years, he explained. When you're planning for outcomes that might not be visible for generations, you approach problems differently. You consider consequences that would never occur to someone thinking in human timescales. The cultural exchange was creating something unprecedented, a hybrid approach that combined human adaptability with ethno stability, human creativity with ethno wisdom, human individualism with pus. So was it a simple misunderstanding, or are we just terrible at talking to aliens? Let me know what you think in the comments. And hey, if you want to see what happens when humanity really goes to war across the stars, stick around for our next video. It's going to blow your mind. Smash that like button, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you in the next one.